They can, but I wouldn't say that they're inherently a good thing, and you need to be deliberate about why you're doing it. So if you have sales roles where, given the breadth of product offering or individual market dynamics, every seller actually has a slightly different responsibility in terms of, what they sell, then this could make sense. I've seen something close to that before. I think the other variant of it is if you're trying to go with some kind of pick your own plan structure where, you as the seller can decide on some variables within the incentive plan, like pay mix. I also think that can make sense, although I really haven't seen that much of it applied in the real world yet.
I think individual plans can work. Have I seen anyone truly build and launch individual plans? No. I think we're more likely to see options than we are to see individual plans. I think one of the rationale towards moving to individualized programs or, pick your own plan, whether it's a menu of options or not, is the one size fits all model probably doesn't work anymore. You do have a very different generation of salespeople today than you had 10, 20 years ago. With that in mind, I think what motivates people has now changed. A mix of money, a mix of praise, a mix of work-life balance, vacations, non-cash incentives. Because of that mix and because what you're trying to ultimately do with a sales comp plan is motivate certain behavior, and you're going to start to see more and more that that one size doesn't fit all, and we're going to start to see more options for salespeople.
So I definitely think they could work. I think, assuming everybody has their own unique plan is a little extreme. When you eliminate things like they might have their specific targets, and that's one element of uniqueness, but I'm thinking more about whether a certain component is in or out, and then how leverage their plan, how much upside opportunity they have as far as accelerators, et cetera, versus fixed base incentive. But I actually feel pretty strongly if an organization is able to execute on it, because I don't think there are many organizations doing this today. I certainly haven't seen it. But if you're able to operationally execute on it and offer multiple sort of options to the reps or the payees, I think that would be a great thing.
I think that conventional wisdom in the plan design world is that for a selling role, account executive as an example, who is responsible for bringing net new business into the organization, that for that selling role, the goal would be to have one compensation plan. And I think that one of the main reasons why people try to keep this idea of one plan per role is in the difficulty in the administration and execution of the plan, and in the difficulty of modeling and costing out all these different variations of the plan.
You need to actually manage the design process and context behind each of those plans. So obviously it's going to take more effort to do 200 plans for a 200-person sales organization than it is to do 10 plans for the same organization. The second thing is equity. So you need to make sure that the plans are equitable for similar sellers. So if you have 10 people in a similar type of role, they should all have somewhat equitable earnings potential. And with the pick your own plan structure, that might look different. That might mean for Rep A, they could put more of their chips on the table, take a more leveraged pay mix, and then have higher upside compared to someone that takes a little bit more base salary. But that has to be kind of rationalized and equitable at the end of the day.
It depends on how far you take it. So if you said, we are truly going to individualize every aspect of the plan down to, I would even say, the personality of the sales rep. And so if you can view any territory and say, look, there's no two territories that are the same, right? And so why should you ever have a comp plan in territory A and B that are the same or even remotely the same? Because the account lists are different, the size of the territory is different, the personality of the reps and what motivates you versus me is different as well. And so theoretically, if you're trying to maximize the output and the sales of a territory, you shouldn't have the same comp plan. However, reality eventually sets in my opinion, and you have to have, in order to actually execute, first of all, it's execution. You have to execute it. And so, individualizing it to the nth degree is likely not possible. And then second, the measurement from my perspective is almost impossible. And I guess what I mean by the measurement is you don't necessarily have the data or the granularity of data to measure why territory A and B are different, right? And so as an example, if, an incentive, component A incentive probably drives me different than it would drive yourself. And so how do you measure that in your sales force?
You may have longer tenured, sales reps. And there are certainly companies like this where people go through different kind of phases, and there may be a point where somebody says, I just need a little bit more stability. They're good at the job, they want to keep doing it, but for whatever reason, their personal choices, I want the slightly less leveraged plan. I realize I'm giving up some upside. And you may have others who are like, what, I want to go for broke. I feel really confident and I'm going to kill it. Because they're going to be competitive. Anybody in that kind of role is going to be competitive regardless. But I do believe that giving them some flexibility could be a very positive thing.
I would make the argument that there are some very good sales reps out there who are fantastic at bringing in net new logos and revenue into an organization that don't want to put 50% of their pay at risk. Another example would be for the people that, as sales reps, that truly believe that they are the best. Do we want to give them the option for taking a higher target or quota with the potential of earning more money if they hit that higher quota or target? I think there's a lot of reps who would make that bet on themselves. And so I think there is a lot of opportunity within sales compensation design to get down to an individual level and better motivate that person and still be in alignment with the strategic goals of the organization. The limitations, I think, have been around technology that enables people to do that.
There's a couple complications. I don't say this just easy to execute on, right? You have to have all the operational capability to run that process in a fairly seamless way. You'd have to look at how the plans work such that there's a pretty high level of fairness, because if the organization quickly learned, well, when I just index highly on these particular components, or I go to a particular direction with the plan, you're almost guaranteed to do better. So I think it'd be really tricky to implement well, but theoretical world, if you could do that, I think it could be really good for employee engagement, morale, et cetera, feeling like the company is really working with them year over year for what's the right thing for that individual. So I definitely could see a lot of benefits in doing it. And I think with today's technology, it's definitely possible, but you'd be pretty mature, organization operationally to execute on that for sure.
You have to have almost infinite data sources and also perfect accuracy in order to make sure everything's fair. Because at the end of the day, as much as the comp plan is trying to drive maximum sales, it needs to be perceived as fair. And so I think that that's kind of the ultimate challenge, is that you can't create something that's fair and perceived as fair.
For sure. Yeah. And you could have issues where if you have sort of a hunter-farmer type of model where an individual rep is expected to do both, but certain components favor, servicing current accounts versus, hunting new accounts. And I could see a lot of unintended biases creeping into the day-to-day behavior. So that would be a big risk for sure of this approach as well.
Yeah, I think you have to have a pretty good understanding of what motivates your salespeople. And I don't think a lot of organizations do. And I think they need to go through a assessment of what truly motivates them, both extrinsic and intrinsic incentives. What truly gets your reps motivated to do what you want them to do? And until that happens, I think it's very difficult to design some of these types of plans. I think the other factor in all of this is the more individualized, the more options you have, the more complex it is to administer. And we see clients struggle with administering basic plans today, let alone complex individualized ones. And you need a solution that's capable of handling flexibility, handling different options and assignments for salespeople.